Joe Harper wiped sweat from his brow as he finished securing the last cargo container. The loading dock of Harmony Junction Space Station was hot and busy today. After 12 hours of hauling crates, his muscles ached, but his shift was finally over. All he wanted now was a cold drink and a chance to put his feet up. "Hey, Joe, heading to the neutral zone?" Liz Murray called out as she approached. Her engineer's jumpsuit was covered in grease stains, and her red hair was tied back in a messy ponytail. "You know it," Joe replied with a tired smile. "Been looking forward to it all day." The two humans walked together through the crowded corridors of Harmony Junction. The space station served as a major trading hub for the Galactic Confederation, home to dozens of alien species. Massive Taurans with their 4 arms pushed past delicate, floating mist people. Insectoid click traders chittered as they exchanged goods with furry Vondarian merchants. And then there were the humans, small, soft, and fragile compared to most other species. "Did you hear about the new trade agreement with the Sarthians?" Liz asked as they walked. Joe shook his head. "Nope. Been too busy loading their fancy mineral shipments to care who's buying them." 50 years had passed since humans had joined the Galactic Confederation. Earth had been welcomed with polite diplomatic words, but the reality was different. Most alien species viewed humans as weaklings who had somehow stumbled into space travel. Humans lacked natural armor, had no claws, possessed average senses, and couldn't even regulate their body temperature properly. The only reason they were tolerated was for their technology and their willingness to do jobs others found beneath them. The neutral zone bar came into view, its entrance marked by a holographic sign showing various alien beverages swirling together. It was one of the few places on the station where all species could gather without diplomatic concerns. Finally, Joe sighed as they entered. The bar was packed tonight. The lighting shifted between cool blues and purples to accommodate the different visual ranges of its patrons. The air was thick with the scent of various alien drinks and foods. They found a small table near the back and sat down. Joe ran a hand through his short brown hair and stretched his sore shoulders. "I'll get the first round," Liz offered, standing up. "The usual?" "You're a lifesaver," Joe replied with a nod. As Liz made her way to the bar, Joe noticed a group of Crawful warriors at a nearby table. They were hard to miss. Each stood nearly 8 feet tall, with mottled green scales and natural armor plates covering their bodies. The Crawful were a proud warrior race from a high-gravity world, known for their strength and their disdain for physically weaker species. Joe tried not to stare, but he could hear them clearly. "Look at them," one Crawful said, gesturing toward a group of humans. Across the room. No scales, no armor, not even decent muscles. How did they ever evolve past being prey? "I heard they break bones from simply falling down," another added with a rumbling laugh. "Their own gravity hurts them." Joe took a deep breath and looked away. He'd heard it all before. No point in getting upset. At a corner table, a slim, blue-skinned alien watched the scene with interest. Vexar, a Valaxian xenobiologist, had been studying interspecies interactions on Harmony Junction for months. He activated his data recorder with a subtle gesture. Human reactions to provocation were part of his research. Liz was returning with their drinks when it happened. The largest Crawful, wearing officer insignia on his armored shoulder, casually extended his foot into the aisle. Liz, focused on not spilling the drinks, didn't see it. She tripped hard, falling forward. Glass shattered as drinks spilled across. A floor, the Crawful table erupted in hissing laughter. The bar went quiet. Everyone watched. This was a familiar scene: aliens bullying humans, and humans accepting it, because what else could they do? Joe stood up slowly. His face showed no anger as he walked over to help Liz. You okay? He asked quietly. Liz nodded, her cheeks flushed with embarrassment. Yeah, just my pride. Joe helped her up, then turned toward the crawful table. The bar grew even quieter. Visionar leaned forward, recording intensifying. Excuse me, Joe said, his voice calm and polite. I think an apology would be appropriate. The Crawthul officer looked up, yellow eyes widening in surprise and narrowing in amusement. An apology? To a human? He stood up, towering over Joe. Perhaps on your world, but we are Crawthul. We do not apologize to prey species. My friend was just trying to walk by, Joe continued, still polite. There was no need for that. The Crawthul officer, Drax, looked around at the watching crowd, then back at the small human before him. I am Officer Drax of the Imperial Guard. If you feel wronged, you may challenge me according to Crawthul tradition. He flashed his sharp teeth in what passed for a smile. But we both know you won't. Joe was quiet for a moment. Then, to everyone's shock, he nodded. I accept your challenge. A wave of murmurs swept through the bar. Liz grabbed Joe's arm. Are you crazy? She whispered. He'll kill you. Drax looked momentarily surprised, then laughed. The human accepts. Let us make space. The crowd quickly formed a circle, moving. Tables aside, aliens began placing bets, all against the human. No one believed Joe had a chance. Station security arrived, but after assessing the situation, the chief of four-armed Toran simply nodded. Cultural exchange is protected under Confederation law. Keep it non-lethal. Vexenar moved closer, fascinated. His instruments detected. Something unexpected. Joe's heart rate indicated excitement, not fear. Why would a human be excited about facing a Crawthul in combat? In the center of the circle, Drax removed his officer's insignia and handed it to one of his companions. He stretched his massive arms, armor plates shifting with the movement. I will try not to damage you permanently, human. Your species is fragile. Joe simply rolled his shoulders and took a relaxed stance. Ready when you are. Drax didn't waste time. He charged forward with surprising speed for his size, claws extended to grab the human. Everyone expected Joe to freeze or attempt to flee. Instead, he sidestepped with fluid grace, pivoting on one foot as Drax barreled past. Before the Crawthul could turn, Joe struck a precise blow to a nerve cluster at the base of Drax's neck, between armor plates. Drax stumbled, his left arm temporarily numbed. He turned, eyes wide with shock. How did you... I work with Crawthul cargo masters, Joe explained, still in that same calm voice. I've studied your physiology. Had to keep up with your workers. The bar was completely silent now. Vexenar's recording instruments captured every movement, every word. Drax growled and attacked again, this time more cautiously. Joe dodged the first swing, but caught a glancing blow from the second. The hit would have shattered another human's ribs, but Joe rolled with it, using the momentum to create distance. Humans are weak, Joe said as he circled, speaking to the crowd as much as to Drax. But we're adaptable. We study. We learn. We find ways to survive. And as the fight continued, every alien in that bar began to realize they might have been wrong about humans all along. The fight had been going on for 5 minutes now. 5 minutes longer than anyone expected a human to last against a Crawthul warrior. Drax circled Joe, his yellow eyes narrowed in confusion and growing respect. Blood dripped from a cut on Joe's lip, and he favored his right side where a powerful blow had connected earlier. But he was still standing, still fighting. You move well for a human, Drax said, testing Joe with a quick swipe. Joe ducked under the attack. And you're faster than most Crawthul I've seen. The crowd watched in stunned silence. Vexar, the Valaxian scientist, had never recorded such a prolonged interspecies combat involving a human. His instruments measured Joe's vital signs, showing elevated adrenaline and endorphin levels. The human should be terrified, but these readings suggested something else entirely: excitement. Liz watched nervously from the edge of the circle, hands clenched at her sides. "Come on, Joe," she whispered. Drax lunged forward suddenly, trying to grapple Joe to the ground. It was a smart move on the ground. The Krathul's superior weight and strength would end the fight quickly. But Joe had been expecting this. He dropped and rolled, coming up behind Drax and landing a solid kick to the back of the warrior's knee joint, one of the few areas where Krathul armor was flexible enough to allow movement. Drax stumbled, but didn't fall. He spun around with surprising speed and caught Joe with a backhanded blow that sent the human flying across the circle. Joe hit the floor hard and slid into the feet of watching aliens. A collective gasp went up from the crowd. Surely this was the end. Vexnar's instruments showed a spike in Joe's pain receptors. Any reasonable being would stay down after such. A hit. Joe pushed himself up slowly, blood now flowing freely from his nose. He spit red onto the floor and grinned at Drax. "That all you got?" Murmurs spread through the crowd. The Krathul warriors at Drax's table looked at each other in confusion. "Why do you continue?" Drax asked, genuine curiosity in his voice. "You cannot win." Joe wiped blood from his face with the back of his hand. Winning isn't always the point. He settled back into a fighting stance. Drax tilted his head, considering this strange concept. Then he attacked again, this time with a flurry of strikes designed to overwhelm. Joe couldn't dodge them all. One blow caught him in the ribs with a crack that everyone heard. Another grazed his temple, but somehow he managed to weave between the worst of them and land a sharp jab to Drax's throat. The Krathul backed off, coughing. Joe used the moment to catch his breath, one arm wrapped protectively around his ribs. "Fascinating," Vexnar muttered, recording every detail. His analysis showed that Joe was using the Krathul's momentum against him, redirecting force rather than meeting it head-on. It was a fighting style perfectly suited for a physically weaker species. 10 minutes into the fight now. The betting. Circles had gone quiet. No one had wagered on the fight lasting this long. "I've studied your people," Joe said between labored breaths. "Your honor traditions, your fighting techniques, your physiology." "Why would you study us?" Drax asked, genuinely puzzled. "Because humans adapt," Joe replied. "It's what we do. We're not the strongest or the fastest, so we learn. We watch. We find ways to survive." The fight continued, both combatants slowing now. Joe was clearly injured, but Drax was tiring too. The Krathul's natural armor made him heavier, and sustaining combat at this pace was draining his energy. Liz had moved closer to Vexnar, noticing his recording equipment. He studied every major species in the Confederation, she told the blue-skinned alien. Not just their biology, but their fighting styles, their cultures. Joe says understanding. Others is the best defense. Vexnar nodded, fascinated. Most species rely on their natural advantages. They never develop such ... adaptability. The crowd gasped as Drax landed another powerful blow. Joe was thrown backward, landing hard on his already injured side. This time, he didn't get up immediately. He lay there, breathing heavily, face contorted in pain. Drax approached cautiously, expecting a trick. When Joe still didn't move, the Krathul stopped and looked around at the crowd. "The human fought well," he announced. "But nature cannot be denied. The strong prevail." Joe's voice, strained but clear, carried across the suddenly silent bar. "That's where you're wrong. Everyone turned to see Joe pushing himself up once more. Blood streamed from a cut above his eye. His left arm hung limply at his side. But he stood. Humans aren't strong like you, Joe continued, his voice growing stronger with each word. We don't have natural armor or claws. We can't see in the dark or breathe underwater. He took a painful step forward. But we can take a beating like nobody else in the galaxy. Vexnar S instruments showed something remarkable. Joe's endorphin levels were spiking, naturally blocking pain. His body was adapting to continue the fight despite severe injuries. Humans evolved on a death world, Joe explained to the stunned crowd. Predators everywhere. Natural disasters. Disease. We survived it all. Not because we were the strongest, but because we could take punishment and keep going. Drax looked genuinely impressed. You cannot win this fight, human. Joe smiled through bloody teeth. Winning looks different to humans. Sometimes just standing back up is a victory. With those words, Joe launched himself at Drax in a final, desperate attack. It was reckless, almost suicidal, but it caught the Krathul off guard. Joe drove his good shoulder into Drax's midsection, using leverage rather than strength to disrupt the larger alien's balance. They both went down hard, Joe landing on top. Before Drax could recover, Joe had pressed his forearm against the Krathul's throat, not choking him, but applying precise pressure to key blood vessels. The crowd went wild. No one had ever seen a human dominate a Krathul warrior like this. In human terms, Joe said quietly to Drax, this would be checkmate. 4. 3/10 seconds, no one moved. Then, slowly, deliberately, Drax raised his hand in the traditional Krathul gesture of respect. The human wins, he declared, loud enough for everyone to hear. Joe rolled off him, collapsing onto his back, completely spent. The last thing he saw before consciousness faded was Liz running toward him, and the stunned faces of aliens who would never look at humans the same way again. Joe woke up to the steady beeping of medical equipment. His whole body felt like it had been run over by a cargo loader. Twice. He tried to sit up and immediately regretted it as pain shot through his ribs. Easy there, tough guy, said a familiar voice. You've got 3 broken ribs, a dislocated shoulder, and enough bruises to look like a walking sunset. Joe turned his head carefully to see Dr. Samantha Kelly checking his vital signs. The human doctor's dark hair was pulled back in a tight bun, and she wore the blue and white uniform of the station's medical staff. How long was I out? Joe asked, his voice raspy. About 12 hours, Dr. Kelly replied, which is actually impressive considering what you went through. A normal recovery would take much longer. Joe noticed they weren't alone in the medical bay. On the other side of his bed stood Vixnar, the blue-skinned Valaxian who had been recording the fight. Next to him was a tall insectoid alien that Joe recognized as Dr. Skitvik, the station's chief medical officer. Our patient is quite remarkable. Dr. ZKTVEK chittered, compound eyes gleaming with scientific interest. Most species would require extensive surgery after such trauma. Humans heal fast, Dr. Kelly said with a hint of pride. It's one of our evolutionary advantages. Vexnar stepped forward. Mr. Harper, my name is Vexnar. I am a xenobiologist studying interspecies interactions. Your fight with Officer Drax has provided invaluable data on human capabilities. Glad I could help, Joe said with a weak smile. Is Drax okay? The aliens exchanged surprised looks. Dr. Kelly just shook her head with a small smile. Officer Drax is fine, Vexnar assured him. He suffered minor bruising to his throat and a mild sprain to his knee joint. He has already been released. Joe nodded, relieved. Good. It was just a fight, nothing personal. A fight that has caused quite a stir throughout the station, Vexnar continued. And beyond? My recording of your encounter has been transmitted to the Confederation scientific community. It has ... changed perspectives. Before Joe could ask what that meant, the door to the medical bay slid open. Liz rushed in, followed by a stern-looking human man in a station administrator's uniform. "Joe!" Liz exclaimed, hurrying to his bedside. "You complete idiot. You magnificent, complete idiot." "Nice to see you too," Joe said with a pained chuckle. The administrator stepped forward. "Mr. Harper, I'm Greg Daniels, station commander. You've created quite a situation." Joe's smile faded. "Sir, I didn't mean to cause trouble. It was a fair fight under cruel traditions." "I'm not here to reprimand you," Commander Daniels clarified. "Though I probably should. Do you have any idea what you've done?" Joe looked around at the serious faces surrounding his bed. "Won a bar fight," Liz snorted. "That's putting it mildly." "Joe, your fight is all anyone's talking about. It's been playing on every screen on the station. And that's just the beginning," Commander Daniels added. "I've received 17 official communications from various Confederation members in the last 8 hours. The Krungtul Empire has issued a formal apology and requested a cultural exchange program." Joe blinked in surprise. "The whole empire? Over a bar fight?" "You did what no human has done before," Vexinar explained. "You defeated a Krothul warrior in honorable combat, using their own traditions against them. It has forced many species to reconsider their assessment of human capabilities." Dr. Z.K. Tevek shittered in agreement. "The medical data alone is fascinating. Human pain tolerance and recovery abilities are far beyond what was previously documented." Commander Daniels sighed. "The Confederation Council has called an emergency session to discuss the human question. Ambassador West is currently trying to convince them we're not planning some kind of galactic takeover." Joe tried to process all this information. His head was still fuzzy from pain medication. "This is crazy. I'm just a cargo hauler." "Not anymore," Liz said with a grin. "You're famous." Joe groaned and closed his eyes. "Great." The door slid open again, and everyone turned to see who it was. Officer Drax ducked his head to fit through the human-sized doorway. The Krothul warrior looked uncomfortable in the medical bay, his yellow eyes darting around before settling on Joe. The room went quiet. Commander Daniels tensed, hand moving subtly toward the communicator on his belt. Drax approached the bed. Slowly. He was not wearing his armor. Instead, dressed in a simple gray tunic, it revealed the natural armor plates on his arms and neck. "Joe Harper," Drax said formally, "I have come to honor you as a worthy opponent." To everyone's surprise, Drax extended his hand in the human gesture of a handshake. Joe reached out and took the offered hand. "Thanks for not killing me." Drax made a sound that might have been a laugh. "You are the first human I have met who did not fear me, who knew how to fight me. I have questions. I'd be happy to answer them when I'm not full of painkillers," Joe replied. Drax nodded solemnly. "The Krothul have misjudged humans. We thought your kind survived by technology alone, that you were weak. But you are not weak, you are different. Your strength is not in your body, but in your ... double quotes." He struggled for the right word. "Adaptability," Vexinar supplied. "Yes, adaptability." Drax looked around at the others. "My clan wishes to learn more. About humans. About your fighting styles that use an opponent's strength against them." Commander Daniels stepped forward. "That could be arranged as part of the cultural exchange program." As the others discussed logistics, Liz leaned close to Joe. "How are you really feeling?" she asked quietly. "Like I picked a fight with a Krothul." Joe replied with a weak smile, "But it was worth it." Dr. Kelly checked Joe's vitals again. "Your healing rate is exceptional, even for a human. You should be able to leave the medical bay in about 3 days." Good, Joe said, because apparently I have a lot to do. Vexenar approached Joe's bedside again. Mr. Harper, I would like to interview you when you are recovered, to understand how you came to study alien physiology and combat techniques. Joe shrugged his good shoulder. It just seemed smart. Humans work alongside dozens of species now. If we want to keep up, we need to understand them. A very human approach, Vexenar noted. Most species rely on their natural advantages rather than learning about others. Commander Daniels cleared his throat. Well, Mr. Harper, once you're recovered, I'll need you to help with this cultural exchange program. Since you started this mess, you can help sort it out. Yes, sir, Joe replied. He wasn't sure how he felt about all this attention, but there was no going back now. As the visitors began to leave, letting Joe rest, Vexenar lingered behind. There is one thing I do not understand, the Valaxian said. During the fight, you seemed to be enjoying yourself. My instruments detected high levels of endorphins and dopamine. Why would you find pleasure in such a dangerous situation? Joe thought about it for a moment. Humans are weird that way. We like challenges, pushing our limits. It's how we've survived all this time. Vexenar made a note on his datapad. Fascinating. I believe the Confederation has much more to learn about humans than we realized. As the Valaxian left, Joe closed his eyes. He had only wanted a quiet drink after a long day of work. Instead, he had accidentally changed humanity's place in the galaxy. All because of a bar fight. 1 month after the fight, Joe sat in a newly designated training room on Harmony Junction. The space had been converted from an unused cargo bay, with padded flooring and simple exercise equipment suitable for various species. A group of 6 Crothul warriors sat in a semicircle before him, their scaled bodies perfectly still as they listened. Human martial arts developed because we needed to defend ourselves against stronger opponents, Joe explained. We couldn't rely on natural weapons or armor, so we created fighting styles that use an opponent's strength against them. Officer Drax, now the official Crothul cultural liaison, nodded thoughtfully. Like water flowing around a rock, instead of trying to move it. Joe smiled. Exactly. Now let's practice that joint lock I showed you yesterday. As the Crothul paired up to practice, Joe walked among them, making corrections to their technique. His ribs had healed well, though Dr. Kelly said he would always have a slight bump where one had broken and mended. Across the station, in the engineering section, Liz Murray was giving a very different lesson. She stood before a group of alien engineers explaining human problem-solving methods. Humans approach engineering challenges differently, she told the diverse group. We look for workarounds when direct solutions aren't possible. Our entire history is filled with making do with limited resources. A tall, spider-like Arachnean engineer raised a limb. Is this why human designs often seem inefficient? You find unusual paths to solutions? Sometimes the direct path isn't available to us, Liz replied, so we get creative. Meanwhile, in his laboratory, Vexenar was hosting a virtual conference with scientists from across the Confederation. Dozens of alien faces filled the screens around him as he presented his findings. The human capacity for adaptation extends beyond physical traits, Vexenar explained, displaying data from his research. They actively study other species, learning weaknesses and strengths. This behavior is rare among Confederation members, who typically rely on innate abilities. A mist person, appearing as a swirling cloud on one screen, pulsed with concern. Could this adaptive nature pose a threat to the Confederation? Vexenar considered the question. Any ability can be used for harm or benefit. But my research suggests humans use adaptation primarily for survival, not dominance. They seek to coexist, not conquer. He displayed footage of Joe training with the Crow Thiel, As you can see, they freely share their knowledge once mutual respect is established. In the station's diplomatic quarter, Ambassador Carol West was having a more difficult conversation. The human representative sat across from a delegation of Confederation officials, her patience clearly tested. "No, Counselor," she said firmly to a bulky, rhino-like Thulian. "Humanity is not developing a secret warrior culture. What happened with Mr. Harper was an isolated incident. An isolated incident that revealed previously undocumented human capabilities," countered the THUL Ambassador West sighed. "Humans have never hidden our abilities. You simply never asked. Your species all assumed we were weak because we lacked natural armor or claws. That was your mistake, not our deception." Back in the training room, Joe was demonstrating a throw technique when Commander Daniels entered. The Krathul students paused respectfully. "How's it going?" Daniels asked, watching as Drax helped another Krathul up from the mat. "Better than expected," Joe replied. "They're quick learners once they stop trying to use brute force for everything." Daniels nodded. "Good. The program's been approved for expansion. Next month we'll have representatives from 5 more species joining the training." Joe wiped sweat from his forehead. "Sir, I'm still just a cargo hauler. I'm not sure I'm qualified to teach all these aliens." "You're qualified enough," Daniel said with a slight smile. "Besides, this is bigger than just fighting techniques now. It's about understanding each other better." After the training session ended, Joe headed to the neutral zone for a well-deserved drink. The bar had changed in the weeks since the fight. Where species once clustered in their own groups, now the seating was more mixed. Humans were no longer ignored or mocked, but greeted with curious respect. The bar's owner, a 4-armed Katarian named Zex, had even renamed a corner of the establishment Harper's Corner, with a small plaque commemorating the fight. Joe found it embarrassing, but customers loved it. Liz waved from their usual table, where she sat with Vexinar, and surprisingly, Dr. Sitket Vic, the station's chief medical officer. "How were the lessons today?" Liz asked as Joe joined them. "Good. Drax is talking about bringing in younger Crothul for training." Joe ordered his usual drink from a passing server. "How about your engineering class?" "They're starting to understand," Liz said. "It's hard for them to grasp why we approach problems so differently, but they're trying." Vexinar's skin rippled with blue patterns, a Valaxian expression of excitement. "I've been analyzing historical human development patterns. Your species' greatest innovations often came from resource limitations or crises." Dr. Z.K. Tivek chittered in agreement. "We've been reviewing human medical records. Your healing capabilities evolved from surviving frequent injuries. Most species evolved to avoid injury entirely through natural defenses. Different evolutionary paths," Joe said with a shrug. "We had to adapt." A group of young Krathul entered the bar, led by Drax. They spotted Joe and approached with respectful nods. "Teacher Harper," Drax greeted. "May we join you?" "My clutchmates wish to hear about Earth-fighting traditions." "Sure," Joe replied, making room. "And just call me Joe." As the group settled in, other aliens drifted closer, listening with interest. "Tell us about this human concept called the underdog," one young Krathul requested. "Drax says it is important to understanding human thinking." Joe thought for a moment. "Well, an underdog is someone who isn't expected to win. Someone facing bad odds. Humans like stories about underdogs who succeed despite those odds." "Like you against Drax," Liz added with a smile. "Exactly," Joe said. "Throughout our history, we've often been the underdogs, facing stronger predators, harsher environments, disease, disaster. We survived by outsmarting threats we couldn't outfight." Vexinar recorded this explanation, his datapad blinking steadily. "This explains why humans seem to enjoy challenges. Other species avoid disadvantageous situations, but humans actively seek them out as growth opportunities. Dr. Z.K. Tevik S. Antenny twitched thoughtfully. In medical terms, stress that doesn't kill you often makes you stronger. Humans seem to have applied this principle to their entire culture. As the conversation continued, more aliens joined the group. Questions flowed freely, genuine curiosity replacing the dismissive attitudes of the past. Joe looked around at the diverse gathering. A month ago, most of these species wouldn't have acknowledged humans as equals. Now they were eagerly learning about Earth cultures, fighting styles, even human music and art. All because of one bar fight. Liz leaned over and whispered, "You know, you've probably done more for human-alien relations than 100 diplomats." Joe smiled and took a sip of his drink. "Just doing my part for the species." Across the bar, a new group of aliens had arrived on the station. They watched the mixed gathering with surprise and confusion, not yet aware of how things had changed. Of them made a loud comment about fragile humans. The entire bar went silent. Drax stood up slowly, his impressive height drawing all eyes. "You must be new here," he said to the newcomer. "Let me tell you about humans. 1 year had passed since the bar fight that changed everything. Harmony Junction had transformed from a simple trading hub to the Confederation's premier center for interspecies cultural exchange. Ships from across the galaxy now made special stops at the station, their crews eager to learn about the surprising humans and their adaptive ways. Joe Harper stood at the viewport in his new quarters, watching as a massive Crothal warship docked alongside the station. It was an impressive sight-gleaming green metal adorned with the Imperial crest. A year ago, such a ship would have caused concern. Now it was just another visitor. The door chimed. "Enter," Joe called. Liz walked in, wearing the insignia of chief engineer, a position she had earned 6 months ago, after her innovative solution to a critical power failure saved the station. "Ready for the big ceremony?" she asked. Joe straightened his formal uniform. As the station's official cultural exchange director, he was expected to look the part, though he still felt more comfortable in his old cargo hauler jumpsuit. "As ready as I'll ever be," he replied. "Still feels strange, all this attention." "Well, get used to it," Liz said with a grin. "The Crothul Emperor doesn't travel across 3 sectors for just anyone." They made their way to the station's main hall, which had been decorated with symbols from both human and Crothul cultures. The space was packed with representatives from dozens of species, all gathered to witness the historic event. Commander Daniels met them at the entrance. "There you are. The Imperial delegation is about to arrive. Try not to start any fights this time, Harper." Joe smiled. "No promises, sir." Inside, Joe spotted familiar faces. Vexenar was there, now heading the Confederation's new Department of Adaptive Studies. Dr. Kelly and Dr. Z.K. Tevek stood together, their joint research on human healing having earned them recognition throughout the medical community. Ambassador West chatted with high-ranking officials from various worlds, looking much more relaxed than she had a year ago. A hush fell over the crowd as the Crothul delegation entered. At their head walked Emperor Craxter, his scales a deeper green than most, his natural armor adorned with ceremonial markings. Beside him walked Officer Drax, now promoted to Imperial Guard Commander. Drax caught Joe's eye and gave a slight nod. They had become unlikely friends over the past year, bonded by their shared experience and mutual respect. Commander Daniels stepped forward to greet the Emperor formally. "Your Imperial Majesty, welcome to Harmony Junction. We are honored by your presence." The Emperor's voice rumbled through the hall. "The honor is ours, Commander. What began here has spread throughout the Confederation. It is fitting that we return to where it started." The ceremony began with speeches from various officials, each highlighting the benefits of the new cultural exchange programs. Joe tried not to fidget as they droned on about policy and diplomatic relations. Finally, it was his turn to speak. Joe stepped up to the podium, looking out at the diverse crowd. "A year ago," he began, "I just wanted a quiet drink after a long day of work. Instead, I ended up in a fight that somehow changed galactic politics." Soft laughter rippled through the audience. "I'm no diplomat or scientist," Joe continued. "I'm just a guy who learned that understanding others is sometimes the best defense. Humans have always been adaptable. We had to be. But what we've learned this past year is that adaptation works best when it goes both ways." He gestured to the mixed crowd. "Look around you. Crowdful warriors practicing human martial arts. Human engineers adopting Arachnian building techniques. Galaxian scientists studying human stress responses. We're all learning from each other. Now, and we're all stronger for it." The Emperor nodded in approval as Joe concluded his speech. What followed was the formal signing of the new Confederation Charter of Cultural Exchange, guaranteeing rights and responsibilities for all member species. As the official ceremonies ended and the reception began, Joe found himself standing with Drax near the bar that had been set up. "Your fighting school on the Kriathul homeworld is doing well," Drax said. "My younger brother writes that he has mastered the human technique of judo." "Glad to hear it," Joe replied. "And the Kriathul fighting sticks you showed me have been popular in human training centers. Turns out we both had things to teach each other." Vexinar joined them, datapad in hand as always. "My latest research confirms what I suspected. Species that engage in cultural exchange show a 47% increase in problem-solving capabilities. The Confederation as a whole is becoming more adaptive." "Just like humans," Drax observed. "Not exactly," Joe corrected. "Better than humans alone. Each species brings unique strengths. Together, we're more than the sum of our parts." Their conversation was interrupted as Emperor Crackster approached. Everyone nearby bowed respectfully. "Joe Harper," the Emperor rumbled. "The human who changed the Empire's understanding of strength." Joe bowed again. "Your Majesty. Before your fight with Drax, we believed humans survived in space only because of your technology," the Emperor continued. "We thought you weak, unworthy of true respect." "A common misconception," Joe said diplomatically. The Emperor's scales rippled in amusement. "Indeed. Now we understand that true strength takes many forms. The Krathul are physically powerful, yes, but we had become rigid. Predictable. Your human adaptability has taught us much." As the reception continued, Joe found himself drawn to the viewport overlooking the docking bay. Below, a human ship was preparing to depart alongside vessels from a dozen other worlds. Crew members of various species worked together, sharing techniques and solving problems as a unified team. Liz joined him at the window. "Quite a view, isn't it?" "Hard to believe it all started with a bar fight," Joe said. "Maybe that's what the galaxy needed," Liz suggested. "A good shock to the system. A reminder that appearances can be deceiving." Commander Daniels approached them. "Harper, I just received word from Earth. The Confederation Council has approved construction of the new Interspecies Academy. They want you to head the Combat Training Division." Joe raised his eyebrows. "Me? I'm not qualified to run an academy." Daniels laughed. "That's what you said about the cultural exchange program, and look how that turned out." As Joe considered this new opportunity, his gaze returned to the ships below. For centuries, humans had looked up at the stars and wondered if they would ever find their place among them. Now they had, not by dominating through strength or technology, but by sharing their most human quality, the ability to adapt, to learn, to grow. The station's announcement system chimed. "Attention all personnel and visitors. The newly renamed Adaptation Center, formerly known as Cargo Bay 12, will be opening for multi-species training in 1 hour. All interested parties are welcome to attend. Joe smiled. 1 bar fight. 1 moment of standing up instead of backing down. And now the galaxy would never be the same. Somewhere on the lower decks, in what used to be called the neutral zone, but was now known as the human factor, a plaque hung on the wall. It reads simply, "Where understanding began." And below that, in smaller letters, with a bar fight,